Hey gorgeous, welcome to Happy Go Fabulous. I am so thrilled that you're here. This is our space where we get real about life, the good, the messy and all the juicy bits in between. Real talk, real life and a whole lot of delicious living. But I must warn you, listening may cause unexpected outbreaks of fabulousness and real life magic. Hi, I'm Catherine and I am so incredibly passionate about helping inspired, motivated, impact-driven, freedom-seeking people just like you to do the deep inner work to create those beautiful outer wonders in life. It's all about revolutionising your relationship with yourself, where you fall madly, deeply in love with who you are and create a life so fabulous you can't wait to jump out of bed every morning to live it. Ready? Because ordinary living is so last season. Life's waiting and it's time to make it fabulous. Let's shimmy on in. Hey gorgeous, how are you? I am feeling amazing. I've just come back from a week's holiday up in Cairns, which is far north Queensland here in Australia, and it was just incredible. John and I, when we go on holidays, we usually go for a couple of weeks, and we haven't been on a holiday since we've moved into our gorgeous sanctuary by the sea, which has almost been a bit of a holiday in itself. But we haven't been for a holiday for almost 2 years, and we decided we would do a pre-summer getaway, and we went for a week and it was amazing. I feel it was just the perfect amount of time for us to be away before like a pre-summer getaway. And I feel super refreshed. I love this time of year. Like we're in spring at the moment, the warmer months. I just love that energy of the warmer months. I am definitely a summer girl, but I love spring. And, you know, I do enjoy autumn and winter, not as much, but being by the coast, it's not nearly as cold as it was in Canberra. So I'm feeling super, super refreshed. But so by the time that this episode goes to air, I would have been back for a little bit, but as I'm recording it, feeling super, super refreshed. So I want to share something with you today in this podcast around a piece that not many people really talk about when it comes to manifesting what's next in your life and when you're wanting to call in things into your life and to create that beautiful life of yours. Not a lot of people talk about this element of it. So there are lots of people talking about how to manifest your dream life, how to create do the vision boards and the visioning and the getting yourself into the state of what it is you want to bring in, the frequency and all of those things, which I 100% agree with. But there's a little piece which is actually quite a big piece that I think a lot of people don't put much emphasis on, and I think it's super, super, super important. It's about bringing things to completion so we can create space for what we want to be calling in. It's about stepping into the new phase with intention. And so it's about intentionally wrapping up where we are in one phase, letting go of the things that are meant to end so the new cycles can begin. Often a lot of people try to create the new cycle, but they're bringing in parts of their life and themselves that they've outgrown. So I've called the episode, You Want a New Life? You got to stop dragging the old one in. So I'm going to share with you my experiences of how I've intentionally brought phases of my life to completion so I can create space for new cycles to begin. And I know I've shared little bits about human design with you previously, like our blueprint that we are designed with in this lifetime based on the time, date and time and place of our birth. We're all designed with certain energy in this lifetime. But anyway, my big one is about growth, which I'm sure is not a surprise for you, but it's very much about finishing what I start out and naturally bringing cycles to completion. So naturally, intentionally bringing cycles of life to completion to create space for new beginnings. And I'm really about helping other people to do the same. So I guess if you were to, that in a snapshot is about really transitioning that growth and transformation, but there's a really specific element about, wrapping up where we're at and being very intentional about what we want to let go of, what we want to continue to bring through into this next phase, and also what new elements we want to bring into the phase. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. And it's a lot of people kind of do the visioning and the creation and the manifesting, which is all absolutely important. I'm not saying that that's not important, but this step that they miss. So they're visioning what they want, they're visualizing what they want, they're getting into that energy and the frequency of what they want, which is all absolutely incredibly important, but without intentionally learning the lessons, closing the loop on where we've been before we bring in the new cycle, we're energetically bringing those patterns in. And I don't know about you, but there's a lot of times in my life where I have just repeated things that I'm just going, far out. Is this still happening? And I was reading a journal the other day. Like I burned a lot of my journals a few years ago, and I did that very intentionally because a lot of what I had captured in those journals was this whole pattern of repeating cycles. And a lot of it was around fears that I was holding. A lot of it was about these patterns that were repeating themselves. Like there was a whole lot around grief and loss and lack. And it was energy of just repetition. And so what I wanted to do was really intentionally close the loop on a lot of those old patterns. So I burned years and years and years of journals. And when I've shared that with people, they're going, oh my God, like I could never do that. For me, it was a real liberating. It was the patterns that I just did not want to be repeating. There was elements in those journals that were juicy goodness. I kept those. I tore those pages out and kept those. But the repeating of like, why am I still going through these same thinking patterns? It's just like, nah, I need to release that and burn that. So energetically, that was about breaking this cycle. Oh, I know what I was saying to you. There was a journal the other day that I was reading. It was one of the ones that I didn't burn. And when I was doing a little bit more unpacking here at the coast, I read this. It was 20 years ago. And it was like I'd just written it yesterday. And it was just like, fuck, that's still like a pattern that's repeating itself. So I went through a very intentional ritual of releasing that pattern. Now, will it still be there in another 20 years? I hope not. But it was some residual stuff that was just like, bloody hell. So anyway, that energetically, it's about helping to break those cycles, break those patterns, bring things to completion that are meant to end. Emotionally as well, it's about helping to process emotions so I can integrate those. And it's also a part of evolution that we, by finishing that cycle, that I can then move into the next cycle clear, intentional, excited. And, I go through this process when I'm going through generally significant changes in life. And you know what? There's been so many of those. And I guess like I said at the beginning, at its core, this is what I help a lot of my clients to go through as well, and how to manage the transitions in life, whether they're chosen, whether they're conscious, deliberate transitions that of your own choosing and your own doing, or whether they have been thrust upon you and they're not of your own volition, it's still really important to be able to bring that chapter to a close, closing the loop, so you can then move on refreshed and renewed. And, these changes, it might be, a change in who you are as a person, could be stages of life that you're going through, it could be relationships, it could be jobs or starting your own business, or changes in circumstances, the changes in life seasons, or the actual physical seasons of the year, any sort of change. This is going to be really useful for you to make the transition smoother, so you're not actually dragging in those old patterns with you. And, I've just been through so many evolutions. I'm still the same at my core of who I am, but there are lots of different versions of her, and going through a major one as I speak to you. And sometimes I feel like I go through these changes on a daily basis. I feel like it's just like, oh, who am I at this stage of the day? So after Mum died, I didn't go through a structured process. This was the beginning of my evolution, I guess, and it was years, and it still is years happening. But this was part of my learning, and I not really knowing at the time all the different things that I was doing then to heal and to grow and to step into a new phase of life. All the things that I went through have really helped me to become more conscious about moving through other major changes. So it's almost like they've become all the tools in the toolkit that I now use, and they've really formed a basis of the process, the structured process that I go through now and that I use with my clients. And one of the things, there are so many life transitions that are flashing through my mind right now. But one of the big ones was in my late 20s, when I was doing a lot of personal development, a lot of healing work, a lot of really learning about myself and human behavior. And I made a very conscious decision about wanting to be the very best version of myself and creating my best and most beautiful life that I could possibly live. And this was the beginning of my learning this really important element of bringing phases of my life to completion. It was just like I couldn't change what had happened in my life, but I could change my view and perception and relationship with what had happened. And there was a lot of things that I felt very lost. I felt very afraid. I felt very alone. I felt super, super, super scared about life. But I also was very capable and got on with life. And so I sort of thought about, well, if I'm going to become the very best version of myself, what will she look like? What will she do? What will her energy be like? What will her thinking be like? How will she show up in the world? And thinking about where I've come from, there were elements that I absolutely wanted to continue into this next phase of my life. And I didn't want to just completely start from scratch, because there was a lot of really empowering and beautiful and strong elements of who I was that I wanted to continue to nurture and to bring into this new phase. But there was also a lot of the elements that I had outgrown and that they were meant to end. And it was that fear, it was the uncertainty, it was the anger, it was the not thinking I was deserving to live a beautiful life. There was a whole lot of patterns that were very deeply ingrained that it was time to bring those to an end. And so I very consciously thought about, well, who do I want to be in this next phase of my life? And it it was an evolution. It wasn't like I sit down for, a day and then I've got it all worked out. Like, it was certainly an evolution around that. But a really big part of it came. So I met John not long after that, and we got together. So I had set this intention that I wanted somebody to share my life with, and somebody who had similar values, and somebody who cared for me and loved me, and I could have fun in life with, and I could grow old with. And I met him, and it was just like, wow. And we had our family very quickly. So we got married very quickly as well, and then the kids came along really quickly. But I was conscious about, well, what sort of wife and mother do I want to be? And, especially about that mother role, because my mum had died when I was young. And it was just like, oh my God, growing up, I didn't have that role model by my side and showing me how to be a mum. And I've shared this with you in other podcasts, but the first baby I ever held was Ellie, my daughter. And I was just like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do with this kid? But I really thought about what sort of parent I wanted to be. And I thought about what I needed to let go of so I could be intentional about the mother I wanted to be. So that was where a lot of the, even though I was just like, bloody hell, I got no idea what I'm doing with this kid, it was letting go of that fear and that worry that I was going to fuck it up, which there was many times that I questioned my parenting abilities. And even now it's just like, that might not have been the best decision. But you know what? It's a decision that I made with love and the best intentions. So, and I've been through lots of other changes as I've evolved, and some really huge changes, like really huge changes. But one of the most recent ones was the decision that John and I made to leave Canberra and to live in this beautiful coastal sanctuary. That has been absolutely huge. I lived in Canberra for over 40 years, and it's where I moved out of home. So I was 17. I grew up in country New South Wales, and I was 17 when I moved out of home. And Canberra was where I moved to. And so it was the first time that I was out of home. It's where I went to business college. It's where I got my first job. And then I went to university there as well. I met my first boyfriend in Canberra. I lived in group houses, that rite of passage of, gosh, I think there was about 10 group houses that I lived in. It was where I bought my first home in Canberra. It's where I met John when I had not long moved into the property, the home that I had bought, where I had the kids. The kids were born in Canberra, and that's where they went to school. It's where we bought our family home that we lived in for the last 25 years. It's where I started my own business and where I made so many friends and was part of this gorgeous community. It's where the kids left home and then they came back home again and left again. And it's where John and I became empty nesters, and then not empty nesters, and then empty nesters again. And it's where we bought a business that went bust and nearly sent us broke and caused a lot of hurt to ourselves and our bank balance. It's where I had all my milestone birthdays. It's where Canberra was where we spent lockdown during the pandemic. It's where, like, there's 40 plus years of memories that Canberra had for me. Like, that was huge. And to make this decision that was no longer going to be my home was exciting, but it was also really sad. And it was, I don't want to say scary, but it was like, oh, the unknown about it. And So the process that I went through, which is indicative of the process that I go through when I'm moving through major transitions, is why am I making this decision to move on? Like, why am I moving into this next phase of life? What is that about? So it was about acknowledging the decisions, that it was time that John and I had both made this decision that the coast was going to be a place for us to retire and live out our golden years. So why am I making that decision? So really sitting down and thinking about that. And what this phase of life has been for me. So I really sat down and you can hear some of what Canberra has been for me, but there was so much more than what I've just captured here. Like, really, what was this phase about? It was a mixture. There was so much that had happened in that 40 years. It was it was a coming of age of moving out of home and having to be an adult. It was where I learnt, I don't know if I've learnt that yet, but where I started learning to be an adult. It started adulting in Canberra. And it was about a real evolution. It was about such beautiful phases of life. There was a lot of hardship that happened when we were living in Canberra as well. There was a lot of freedom, but there was also a lot of challenges living there. So I really reflect on, what is this phase of life been for me? But what has it allowed me to do? Oh my gosh, living in Canberra, I feel teary now because when am I going to get through a podcast without crying? Canberra was just such a incredible phase of my life, and so much happened there. It allowed me to really step into who I am. It allowed me to discover who I am. It allowed me to find a job and a career and a profession and a calling in life that I'm so honoured and excited that I get to do. Like, had I not been to business college and be allocated a job to work at the taxation office and then be a really shitty executive assistant and have my boss put me forward to teach people to type, that then led on to me, being in learning and development and managing learning and development teams, and, learning my craft as a coach and a consultant and specializing in human behavior and psychology, and doors opening up for me to go to university and study things that I never, ever, ever thought I would study. Like, Canberra allowed me to do that. It allowed me to raise my family in such a beautiful city and have wonderful, wonderful friends that are lifelong friends. It allowed me to meet my husband and start a life with him. It allowed me to be a really pivotal part of the community there and the rowing community that I was president of, but also a member of for so many years. Like, it really, it allowed me to do so much, and all the things that I remember about this phase of life. And what I discovered about myself, that this really was about learning and becoming me. And, it was when I was growing up after Mum died, that there was no counselling, there was nothing, that it was kind of just get on with life. So when I moved to Canberra, it opened these doors that weren't there for me. It allowed me to so I'm just remembering some of those group houses that I lived in. Fuck, I wish there was some of those were not the best experiences, but it allowed me to experience those rite of passage and I discovered who I want to live with and who I don't want to live with. And also thinking about all the things that made my heart sing in those 40-odd years, and also the things that broke my heart while I was living there, and the lessons that I learned about myself and about life. And so I go through, the process I go through is acknowledging the parts of my life that I'm moving on from. And then I think about, what things am I ready to close the chapter on this life? And there was a lot of things that I was closing the chapter on. Oh my God, why do I cry so much? And I haven't got my tissues with me. But there was a lot of things I was closing the chapter on. I was closing the chapter on some really special friendships. And it's not that they're not friends anymore, but they're not everyday pop around kind of friends. So I was closing the chapter on some of the work that I was doing there. I was closing the chapter on my daily routines there in Canberra. I was closing the chapter on my identity of, how I showed up every day. And so I sort of think about, well, what am I ready to close this chapter of my life on? And there was some points, when we were living in Canberra that were really hard and really tough. And I never want them to repeat themselves again. And a lot of those were around the business that we had, that in relation to finances, like we were in really very dire financial situation for a number of years. And, I never, ever, 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 ever want that to happen again. So I got really clear about never wanting to experience that lack again. And so what am I ready to close the chapter on? Even things like, I was a really integral member of our rowing community, and I was president for 6 years, and that wasn't going to be anymore. That, sure, I keep in contact with the friends, but it was going to be different. So I'm closing the chapter there. And it was about bringing things to completion, I guess. And then I think about, what parts of my current self and life do I want to keep nurturing, and that I want to carry forward into this next chapter of my life. So it's not like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's about, there are some things that I want to bring to completion. There are things that are meant to end in that cycle of living in Canberra, but there are also some things that I want to keep nurturing and carrying forward into this next chapter. There's a whole lot of, all my values, there are a lot of beautiful friendships that carrying forward. There's the energy, there's the excitement, there's the beauty of who I am, and a lot of those qualities of who I am, I absolutely want to carry those forward into the next chapter. I don't want to stop those or finish those at all. And then so I think about, what do I want to keep nurturing, and what new things do I want in for me, or way of being I want to incorporate as I move forward. And there's a lot of stuff. It's about, who am I in this next phase of living at the coast, working differently, showing up differently? How do I want all of that to happen, and who do I want to be, and what new things can I bring in? And so that's kind of the process that I go through. It's very, very intentional, and I'll show that to you afterwards. But the process I take my clients through now is based on that exact process. And then I do this great big ritual and ceremony about bringing the chapter of my life to a close, and then calling in space for new beginnings. So I did this huge, big completion blessing around leaving Canberra. And it was acknowledging what Canberra had been for me. And it has been a really big, beautiful part of my heart and my life. And so much has happened there. And it was about going, I'm moving on from this this time in my life. And so I did this big completion blessing around it. And that's when I actually burned a lot of those old journals that I had. And this wasn't just a sit down in a day. This was a, this was an iterative process. This was over, several weeks. And probably several weeks I did this one. And then I did this big, beautiful renewal blessing. And this was about, what am I calling in? And what is this next phase of life? What do I want that to be like? What do I want this beautiful sanctuary by the sea to represent for me and to open up for me and to be for me? And I was very, very intentional about what I want. And this was hard. I'll be really, really honest with you. I had done it. I had started this process before we had put the house on the market, and I was continuing it while we put the house on the market. And then we had the really, really sad time when my niece passed away, and that it was hard for me to really think about what I want in this next phase of life, because there was a lot of not feeling like that's what I should be thinking about. There was a lot of healing that had to happen, and I found it really hard to allow myself to think about what I wanted to have instead. So it's only been more recently that I've kind of re-engaged with that. I've spent probably the last 12 months doing a lot of healing. So, and not just for my niece and my brother and his wife, but a lot of my own healing, that grief and loss that still needed healing as well. So there's layers and layers to that. So I did do a renewal blessing, but then it was when I've just recently done that again. So I'm going through this phase again. So I did a big one from leaving Canberra, and you can tell that that's been huge, but now it's kind of evolving and happening again. So where am I now? Where am I right now in life? What is ending for me now? And where is the new cycle beginning? So I'm going through this evolution again. And so it's about reflecting on what I want this next phase to be like, and how I want to show up, and who am I, and what things do I want to let go of? What am I carrying forward? What new things will I be creating for myself and my identity? And then it's about obviously taking inspired action. It's not just about the ceremony and the ritual, but it's about acknowledging, it's the completion, intentionally bringing things to completion, letting go of things that are meant to end so new cycles can begin. But what I have been sharing this process with my clients, because most of my clients are going through transitions in life. They're going through their version of bringing phases of life to completion. And this playbook that I've got is called Celebrating the Cycles of Life Playbook. And it's for when you're ready to bring one phase of life to completion and move into the next. So what I've done is I've documented the process that I've used, and also the process that I've been using with my clients. And I actually documented it when I was with one client. No, I documented it for myself. I did this for myself when I was leaving Canberra, because it was a really big transition. And I like to have structure and process so I can move through things. And so I did this for myself. I'm just remembering now. So this was drawing from all the things that I had been doing. And then I thought, I want to do it into a cute, sexy playbook for myself. And then I had a client that I was working with at the time that I was going through my major change, and he was going through a huge change. He was moving countries and a whole identity shift. And I said, oh, here's my Cycles of Life playbook. And then I've been sharing it with all the clients that I work with privately. And that, man, there's been such an amazing response. So anyway, you can get a copy of this. It's super, super cheap for you to access, and it's got all the steps that I'm going through. So if I've been a bit waffly in this episode, the steps are all in here, and I'll put the link into the show notes for that as well. But so it takes you through the different stages. The first stage really is about, let's start with where you want to be. So that's what I think about. Well, who do I want to be in this next phase of my life? And then there's a whole lot of prompts there. What are the things that I want to have happen? What are the gifts that I want to give myself? Want this phase of life to be, you fill in the gaps. How do I want to show up? How do I want to feel? And there's a whole lot of other prompts. There's a lot of prompts. And then the next one is, then we go back to the phase of life that we're ready to bring to completion and that we're ready to move on from. And there's a whole lot of reflective prompts to help you acknowledge, honor, learn from, tie up in a nice little bow the stage of life that you're moving on from. And, what do you want to remember? And that, for me, that was just so profound. Like, it's exciting thinking about what I want, but gosh, it was profound in thinking about what this cycle of life has given me. So profound. And a lot of lessons come from that. And then there's ritual and ceremony. So this is a delicious combination of that soulful energetics, but also strategy as well. So there's a ceremony and there's a completion ceremony for what you're ready to release. And then there's a renewal blessing for what you're ready to call in. And then it's about taking action and, what are the goals for you moving forward? So if you want a copy of that, as I said, it's one that you can just work through yourself, but it's got all the steps there and the prompts there. And it is really a beautiful process. It's a really sacred, self-honoring, beautiful, beautiful process. And I've just 2 clients just on the last couple of weekends that I've worked with. One of them has made the very brave decision to leave a relationship, and we've done some work around that. But one of the things she was saying is, things seem to be pretty good with my ex, and we're just kind of considering whether we will reconcile. And I am never one to say yes or no or give advice, but it was about, you've made the decision to end a relationship and there was reasons for that decision. It's about bringing that phase to completion to be able to then move into the next phase with a clear mind. It's about what lessons do you need to learn from the relationship and being in the relationship before you move forward and make a decision whether you permanently separate or whether you reconcile. And I shared this Cycles of Life playbook with her, and she was just like, oh my God, that has just been so powerful, because there's a whole lot of things that I consciously, my mind wouldn't have thought about. And it's just really helped me to learn about myself. And it's also helped me to think about that relationship, make that relationship differently, that her to think about the relationship differently and not just see it for all its faults, but see it for what it actually, the beautiful parts of the relationship as well, and honouring those. And sure, there were some elements that led to her to end that relationship, but it was really helped her to sort of see it for the whole partner. It gave her a very different perspective on the relationship, which was fantastic. So now she's moving into the next phase, not saying will I won't I, but it's about who do I want to be, and who do I want to be in a relationship, and who do I want to be in a relationship with, and whether that ends up being her ex or not. that's something that will evolve. And there was another beautiful client that I worked with only just yesterday, actually, and she was sharing parts of her life, and there was something that I just repeated back to her, and she really just burst into tears, like really deep tears, and she said, "Oh, I don't want to cry. I really don't. I didn't want to cry here. I don't like crying." And it was kind of exploring that in more detail. And it's just because the crying is the releasing, and she has had some real challenges in life from a young child, a lot of trauma. And she has learned, her safety mechanism has learned to keep that, to control the emotions and not to release them. And when she felt safe with me, she just released them. And it was that the belief was that she's not worthy of having a life that she wanted. And she felt really, really sad about that. So the process that I will be getting her to explore is, what does she need to bring to completion so she can move into this next phase of life, not carrying that same trauma and emotions with her. And for me, this is not a process of letting go of who I have been, letting go of who I was. It's about honoring her. It's about integrating her and not letting her run the show anymore. Like, there's parts that just naturally time to bring it to close. It's like having a farewell party for those parts. It's like wishing them love, a bon voyage party. It's like, see you later, gorgeous, but you no longer need to be part of this next phase of my life. So I hope that's made sense. I did feel a bit waffly with that. So really, for me, this is such a crucial part of, let's just call it the manifesting process, that we're manifesting a life that we're wanting. We're manifesting a relationship that we want. We're manifesting a relationship that we want with ourselves. We're manifesting a beautiful life, whatever it is that we're manifesting, a holiday, whatever it is that you're manifesting. Do all of the things, like visualize, if it's a vision board, if it's getting yourself into the state, if it's about regulating your nervous system so you can actually hold space for what it is that you're calling in. But go back to that step of, what is it that I am actually bringing to completion? What do I need to let go of? What do I no longer need when I move into this next phase? And when I do my corporate consultancy and coaching, it's like the stop, start, continue. So what am I going to stop doing? What am I going to start doing? What am I going to continue doing? The process is very similar around that. What do I want in the next phase? What is not going to serve me in this next phase? And then what am I going to continue doing in this next phase? And if there's anything new that I need to bring in. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you do want some like closer assistance in working through this, I can do that with my one-on-one sessions. So we've got the short life strategy sessions, and sometimes that's enough, like a 2-hour session that we can work through and help you to get some clarity around that. Or if you're wanting some longer term assistance, my Elevate coaching program is a really beautiful, holistic deep dive into you. So those details are here now. And also, if you want that Celebrating the Cycles of Life playbook, that's available for you as well. So anyway, hugs, happiness. And as always, I would love for you to reach out and let me know where you're at with things. Take care. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Happy Go Fabulous. I hope you loved it. If you did, could I ask a big favour? Please subscribe, leave a review, and most importantly, share the love and let your besties know about the podcast. This will help get it into the hearts and ears of all the gorgeous souls who need a little bit of fabulous in their life. If you'd like some more high vibe happiness in your life, come and visit me on my Happiness Hive socials. And make sure you've signed up to my newsletter, your weekly drop of juicy goodness. Pop over to my Happiness Hive website and click on the link Working with Catherine. I'd love to help you make life amazing. Until next time, keep being fabulous.